You're listening to Radio Reverb 97.2 FM and DAB, your local community radio station. I'm Heather Hilda Darling of Let's Talk Property, sponsored by Callaway's Estate Agents. Gas Safety Week, the annual campaign to raise awareness of gas safety, runs from the 13th to the 19th of September this year. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and join me and Martyn Bridges, Director at Worcester Bosch, as we say hello to hydrogen boilers.
Hi Heather, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Very good indeed.
Oh, it seems like our annual meeting over Zoom, doesn't it? Here we are, Gas Safety Week again, from the 13th to the 19th of this week. It seems rather pertinent as the temperatures are dropping in the morning, aren't they? And it's quite chilly when we go to bed as well. So it's September, clearly. Now, Brits saying hello to hydrogen boilers. This isn't something that we would have been talking about a year ago. And Worcester Bosch have commissioned some research on this subject. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yes, it's possibly, if the government go in this direction, the gas we'll be using in the future. We all know that we have to achieve net zero carbon by 2050. And there is anything between 23 and 24 million of us who presently heat our homes from a gas-fired boiler. And methane gas, or natural gas as it's called, that creates carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, but CO2 is the thing they're trying to eliminate. So we must change either our heating systems to something which isn't gas, or we believe changing the gas, greening the gas, a little bit like unleaded petrol, is probably the easiest thing to do. So yes, it's a hot topic because hydrogen boiler trials are being conducted at various places around the country to try and give enough evidence for the government to select which direction really to take.
So 3 points really that I'd like to cover with you this morning, Martyn. Safety first. How safe are hydrogen boilers, and what do the British public worry about maybe with hydrogen boilers?
I think the very name hydrogen is a little scary.
I'd agree.
There are probably memories of, the warships and things like that, harking back 100 years or more. So it's a gas name which can conjure up a little bit of fear. And I guess if we called natural gas methane, then that may also have a negative perception about it. But a hydrogen boiler, and bear in mind there's hydrogen cookers and fires being trialled at the moment, they look exactly the same as your present gas or gas boiler or cooker would look. And probably 95% of the boiler is derived from a natural gas boiler. So it's very familiar. There's nothing really different for the consumer or the installer to be too concerned about. The clever bit, which is where the changes have been made, is in the combustion area where the gas is actually ignited. So we've got a different burner and we light the flame in a slightly different way, and we sense that the flame is alight with a different method as well. But aside from that, there are some characteristical changes to hydrogen. It has things which some of your listeners may not be interested in, but the flame speed of hydrogen is around 8 times that of natural gas. The molecules of hydrogen are slightly smaller than natural gas, so arguably it could it's harder to seal, but that's really not the case in reality. And I believe some of the listeners rather, may have chanced upon an article a few weeks ago where it was published in one of the daily papers where the headline was "Hydrogen 4 times more dangerous than natural gas," which is very scary, of course,
Yes.
when you read that. But when you dissect that article, they predicted 65 injuries would happen annually. The present rate of injuries from explosions and things like that is 17. So if you think that we're going to go from 17 to 65, and there are 24 million homes connected to the gas grid. That's a failure rate of 0.00004%. So it's quite safe. And this is just a desktop study as well. You know, that the article in question could easily have said hydrogen is 4 times safer than natural gas because there's no carbon monoxide generated. And that's by far a bigger hazard to gas users than any gas leak or explosion that takes place.
So before I move on to the second point that I wanted to raise with you, Martyn, obviously working in property and lots of landlords and tenants, does this mean that with a hydrogen boiler you don't have the CO2 monitors anymore? Or will there be a similar sort of alarm system?
Arguably, you wouldn't need them. You wouldn't need, because there's no carbon dioxide or monoxide created. I guess you would still need them for the cooker or a gas fire, for instance, if they were moved to hydrogen as well. But the boiler itself, no, it's inherently safe. So yes, it would serve no purpose if the boiler was the only product in the home.
Okay, that's a good point. Now, in terms of cost efficiency, you know, obviously this time of the year, we're all thinking we're going to be turning on our boilers soon, get the heating going in our homes. How much do we save potentially having a hydrogen boiler? Is it enough to really think about changing if you consider how much it's going to cost to put in a brand new boiler?
The boiler is going to be held at the same cost as natural gas boilers. So because 95% of that boiler is actually a natural gas boiler, so the 4 larger manufacturers have pledged to the government that these boilers will be no more expensive than a gas boiler will be. The cost of hydrogen will be more expensive than natural gas, which is extraordinarily cheap at the moment. It's something like 4 pence for a kilowatt hour. It is looking like, and bearing in mind we're trying to foresee 30 years away, that 4 pence could be more like 7 or 8 pence per kilowatt hour. But the alternative to decarbonisation is, of course, electricity, and that's around 17 pence per kilowatt hour today. So it is more expensive than where we are, but less expensive than the other alternative on the table.
So if it is going to be cheaper, do you think this will persuade people, irrespective of the safety aspects that they might be worried about, to give it a try?
Yes, I would like to hopefully keep them rest assured, shall we say, that there will be no safety worries with hydrogen. The trials which are taking place are pushing everything to the extreme. So the safety issue is one you can welcome, because you will be safer with hydrogen simply because there's no carbon monoxide. But I don't think you'll find people being able to select it, shall we say. They can select gas or an alternative, but the gas they're going to be receiving down the pipe in 20 years' time, perhaps, is likely to be hydrogen if the government make that decision. Your next door neighbour won't be on natural gas and you be on hydrogen. The change will be on a street by street, city by city basis, if that's the way we go. In the interim, between hydrogen being fully available throughout the country, it is looking like the government might put into policy that you can only buy hydrogen-ready boilers from around the mid-2020s. So you and I, when we change our boiler, and 1.7 million of us do this every year, we will be buying a hydrogen-ready boiler that you will connect to your existing natural gas supply. But if and when hydrogen actually comes down your street eventually, a simple conversion, 2 or 3 inexpensive components, and about 30 minutes to an hour of an engineer's time, and that boiler is now converted to 100% hydrogen and is free of any carbon dioxide.
I've just heard one landlord who had to change the gauge of the pipes after about 20 years. Are we going to have to change the gauge of our gas pipes again for these hydrogen boilers, or will the gas come down the same as it is already?
It's the same gas pressure
Right.
as we have today. The pipework under the roads is being replaced anyhow. So the 150,000 miles of natural gas infrastructure zigzagging its way down the streets, that's all being replaced. We're 60% of the way through a pipework replacement program. It started about 12 years ago, before hydrogen was even conceived. So we're going to have polyethylene, that yellow plastic pipe you quite often see when you're stuck in a traffic jam behind some temporary roadworks. That's what they're doing, replacing the steel pipe with polyethylene pipe. And the diameter of that is going to be large enough to provide sufficient gas into every property. It is unlikely, because most of the time now we have combi boilers, which have generally a 22 millimeter diameter pipe feeding that boiler. That will be enough for hydrogen. So, providing it's made of the right material, which is copper generally, that's suitable for hydrogen as well. There shouldn't be any extreme modifications needed to your house or heating system.
Martyn, I'm very well aware that I'm speaking to an expert on boilers, but obviously a lot of Brits don't have your knowledge. And clearly, if they don't have the knowledge about, changing to hydrogen boilers and they're already worried, where should they be looking for more information? And just to allay any fears that they have, where would you suggest they go?
Well, the Worcester Bosch website's pretty good. We've got various bits of information on there. There's even a downloadable publication called Fueling the Future, where we explain the three alternatives really to natural gas or oil boilers, which might be how you heat your homes in the future. So, yeah, Worcester Bosch, the website, just any search engine, it'll throw it up at you. And please have a look at anything on there connected with hydrogen.
Well, that's great advice. I have just one last question. All those people who are now thinking, I need to change my boiler, it's getting a bit old, should they just go stop and start looking at these new hydrogen boilers now? If, we are being encouraged to swap over, we don't want to be doing another swap in 5 years' time in the mid-20s. What would you suggest people do if they need a new boiler now? And are there enough plumbers and gas safe engineers out there who know enough about the hydrogen boilers to advise consumers?
Well, it is very new and it's in its trial. So there are no hydrogen ready boilers currently on the market. They are prototypes being used for trial purposes. The likely move the government will make is, first of all, to inject a blend of hydrogen into the natural gas pipe. So we are probably going to see anything up to 20% hydrogen injected into the grid, because I don't think you're going to see any mass supply of hydrogen probably until the mid 2030s. So that's at least another boiler away. Generally, that's 15 years or so away. So all of our boilers and everybody else's since 1996, they've been tested on a 22% blend of hydrogen anyhow. So any boiler you buy today would be suitable for this forthcoming injection of smaller amounts of hydrogen. But when we get to 100%, 15 years or so away, you would then have to replace your boiler to either hydrogen ready or a hydrogen bespoke one. But that's generally, well past the normal life expectancy of a boiler. So feel confident in going to buy a boiler. You are future-proofed. If you buy one today, you're future-proof for at least 15 years, I would suggest.
Wonderful. Martyn, can I say it's been an absolute gas speaking to you today? And obviously, we are marking Gas Safety Week at the 13th to the 19th, and that is the annual campaign to raise awareness of gas safety and obviously highlighting the introduction of new and more sustainable hydrogen boilers. So thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
As always, it's a pleasure as well.
Thank you to my guest today, Martyn Bridges, Director at Worcester Bosch, and for your company too. This is Heather Hilda Darling of Let's Talk Property on Radio Reverb 97.2 FM and DAB.